So weakness of the face. So if you find that the face is becoming misshapen, it's different, that may be a clue. A means arm. So if you ask somebody to put their arms up and one of them goes down, that means the arm is weak. So that's speech, slurring of speech, not able to get the words out, not understanding spoken word. Those are very important. So FAS, the T actually means time, which means you don't have time to waste. You must take that person to a hospital immediately. The brain is a very important organ. It really is very sensitive. And one of the key things about the brain, it doesn't store food. So it needs sugar, it wants it now. It needs oxygen, it wants it now. It doesn't store to use later, which means the blood supply to the brain must be constant. So when there's a stroke, there's no blood supply to the brain. That means there's no sugar, glucose, there's no oxygen. It doesn't store them, so it starts to suffer. So if anybody is going to help to repair the brain, that starts from getting that patient or the person suffering a stroke to a hospital immediately. And we want to be able to reverse what's happening, to feed the brain, to give oxygen to the brain within 3 to 4 hours. Otherwise, the damage is permanent. So if anyone notices that somebody is suffering a stroke, you must get them to a hospital immediately, because that gives us a chance, a fighting chance, to reopen the pipes supplying blood to the brain, get the sugar and the oxygen to the brain so it can start to recover within 3 to 4 hours.
So what is our situation here, though? I mean, in Africa, what's the reality for us here in Africa around that 3 to 4 hour window you just mentioned?
A lot of people don't even know they're suffering a stroke in the first place, so they don't go to a hospital. For those who know or who may have suffered a stroke, they don't get to a hospital until after a day, 2 days, a week, where we can't do anything anymore. So our major problem is getting information to the people about stroke so that they are aware what the symptoms of stroke are and the importance of time. So we say, there was a song before that said, time na money. This one, time is brain. You waste time, you lose brain. Very important.
Wow. Time is brain. You waste time, you lose brain. I like that. So how do we prevent stroke?
The major thing is to watch blood pressure. I think for everyone above 40, 50, you should know what your blood pressure is. You should be checking regularly. So everybody should have a general practitioner or at least some facility that they go to for regular blood pressure measurements. For the average person, whenever you go to a chemist for whatever you need to do, if you happen to be in a hospital, and our hospital should actually offer this as a free service anyway, just check every so often. It's not a big deal. It takes a minute to get a blood pressure check. If you suffer from hypertension, then you should be guided by your doctor. If you don't, just check. Anytime you have an opportunity, just check.
Okay, so make sure we check our blood pressure. What other things can we do to prevent stroke?
The other important thing is diabetes. You need to know whether you're diabetic or not. And so everybody should check that as well. Once in a while, do your blood pressure, your blood sugar level. And the blood sugar level that we're concerned about is the fasting blood sugar, very early in the morning before you have breakfast. And that doesn't have to be done regularly, but you should know every year, just have a check. Make sure everything is okay.
Okay, so we check our blood pressure. We check for
blood
diabetes.
Sugar, yes.
What else should we be doing?
Cholesterol is also important. We should check cholesterol. Aside from just checking to know your numbers, as we call them, regular exercise, don't smoke, minimum alcohol. Those are the key things. And one other important thing, of course, is if you have a family history of stroke, if somebody in your family has suffered a stroke before, it means that there is some risk within the family. You need to get to the bottom of what that risk is so you can take a special effort to prevent that in yourself.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's one of the Twitter questions that we had too, was that if someone in my family has suffered a stroke, pretty much am I at risk for stroke? So yes, if you have a family history, the answer to that question is if you have a family history of stroke, yes, you are at risk for stroke. And I guess that makes it more important that you make every effort then to prevent stroke. So what about lifestyle choices that we make? What sort of things do we need to do to prevent stroke?
Well, keep fit is very important. Keeping your weight down is very important. So going out, have an exercise, have a program for keep fit or exercise. I go jogging 20 minutes every morning. People can go for a walk, go for a power walk. But just do something regularly. The most important thing, of course, is that it keeps your heart working harder, working more efficiently. So it's pumping blood and, more efficiently through to the brain. Secondly, it keeps your weight down, so you don't have all that cholesterol floating around, which can block the blood vessels to the brain. And it generally makes you feel a lot better, makes you feel alive. So exercise, key, very important.
Very important. So exercise, watch what we eat, keep our weight down. Let me, because I have a passion about because you mentioned the checkups, and I have a passion about that. I'm a real believer in changing the culture in sub-Saharan Africa. And I know there's a reason for it. I know that people are struggling to make a living and to feed their children and send their children to school. So the concept of paying money when I feel well to go and see a doctor doesn't make sense.
Yes.
But that's really what preventive medicine is, isn't it?
It certainly is.
It's doing things that you need to do ahead of time to prevent you being ill. So would you say it's safe to say that if I am, say, 35 and over, I should be seeing a doctor at least once a year, just to know that I'm okay, not wait to get the malaria or the typhoid to go into? Would you say that's a good advice?
It is very good advice. My only caution is that people should be guided by their doctor, because the kind of tests that we need to run depends on age, depends on gender, whether you're a man or a woman. That's important. I don't like the fact that people can just go willy-nilly to a diagnosis center and say, hey, I'm here, run all the tests.
Yes.
It doesn't make sense to us most of the time, because it needs to be specific for that particular person.
Yes.
But certainly, going to your doctor and say, listen, I want to do a yearly check, then be guided by the doctor to, prescribe what test you actually need, which will make sense to the doctor, giving your medical history, giving your age, and giving whether you're a man or a woman.
So when it comes to the issue of stroke, what sort of nuggets would you give our audience?
In Nigeria specifically, people think that when you've had a stroke, that it was shot by an arrow, through an arrow by somebody in the village. Well, it's not true. There's nobody cooking stroke and shooting it, here and there. So this misconception that stroke is caused by somebody else is actually not true, and it leads to delays in seeking care or going to places where you won't get help. For stroke, so long as people understand that it is because of blockage or a rupture of the blood vessel to the brain, then it's something that you've caused for yourself in a way because of lifestyle or because of your family history. So you need to find the treatment, and the treatment actually resides in hospital. So we need to get somebody like that to a hospital quickly so we can start to reverse or at least feed the brain to get it, to recover and limit the damage in a way. So getting to a hospital is critical information that people need to know. You must get to a hospital quickly. By all means, phone your pastor and ask that the congregation be praying for you, or you get yourself to a hospital.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ogugbo. It has been wonderful. It seemed like the time has just flown by, and you've given us so much information, and I really appreciate your joining us today on the Health Zone and teaching us so much about stroke. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's been our pleasure to have you on the show. Well, I hope you'll come back again. We'll call you back to do something else for us.
I will.
Okay,
Definitely.
so it's been great. We've had Dr. Ogugbo. We've been talking to him about stroke. Don't go away. We'll be right back.